When I was asked to introduce the next inductee, there was no hesitation at all. Dan and I go back 54 years, being friends since kindergarten. Because of our friendship, I've been able to be a part of Dan's very successful career, going from groundskeeper to a World Series and 2 American League Championship rings. Hopefully I can steal one of them to add to my collection one day. The best way to describe a best friend who has been successful is one who never forgets where he came from. And that is Dan. I have called on Dan many times for tickets for myself and for my friends, as well as for memorabilia for organizations, and not once did Dan hesitate. Our friendship has not only allowed me, but also my family to enjoy Dan's success. We have spent several vacations being baseball fans of the Montreal Expos, the Buffalo Bisons, the Rochester Red Wings, the Cincinnati Reds, the Florida Marlins, and now the Detroit Tigers. If there was a downside to all this, it is having to change team jerseys each time he moved to a new team, but definitely worth it all. We have survived some scary moments along this journey, having been on the 12th story of a hotel in Los Angeles when an earthquake occurred. Luckily, we made it through and went on to meet Pete Rose and his wife. I think I was more excited about meeting Pete Rose's wife. It is now my honor to introduce to you my best friend and deserving inductee, Dan Lunetta.
Hey Dad, just wanted to congratulate you on your induction to the Hall of Fame and tell you one of my favorite baseball stories. Probably have to be when we went on the business trip together quite some time ago, and I forget where it was. It was really rainy and stormy, and it was very windy and cold. And we got back to the hotel after the game, and I was wearing my Heelys that I used to love to roll around in everywhere. And we were coming up to the entrance, and we were about to go in, and we were talking about something. And as we were walking in, there was this big gust of wind, and you told me not to roll, but I did it anyway. And it took me all the way down the sidewalk into the bush, and I was sitting in the bush, and I was yelling, and you had to come get me, and we barely made it back to the hotel. But that was probably one of the funnest things that ever happened when we were together on a baseball trip. So again, I just wanted to say congratulations, and it's a big deal. I'm proud of you, and I love you and miss you, and look forward to seeing you soon.
I have been asked probably many times in the last 20 years, what is it like to be a wife and a mom, raising kids in this crazy, often unpredictable, very long season of professional baseball, 162 games to be exact. And actually, depending on when you ask me that question, how close we are to October and where we are in the standings, I probably would give you a different answer. But there's a part of my answer that would never change. And I consider myself extremely blessed and very thankful to my husband for inviting me along for the ride. 3 World Series in 20 years, and a lot more years for him, of course, provides a lot of memories. And probably my top 10 memories as a mom and as a wife are going to be different than what Dan's would be and our children's. But unfortunately, it was very difficult tonight for Dan because our 13-year-old son, Samuel, is here. But our 18-year-old son that you just saw, Anthony, who has spent the most time on the road with his dad since they were little. And I remember Dan saying to me in the 2006 World Series when our children came into the team plane and sat down on the team plane and they're looking at their little menus, you know, what they're going to order. And Dan leaned over to me and he said, I don't know if they're going to ever get it. I wonder if they're ever going to appreciate and understand what they've been able to do at this young age. And I remember saying to Dan, I said, you know what? They're young now and they were born into this. And baseball stadiums are their second playground. But I bet every adult in this room can testify to the fact that as you got older, you began to appreciate things that you didn't understand when you were young. But as you got older, you had perspective and you began to appreciate it. So we wanted to share that video with Dan to let him know that even though Anthony is far away in miles, he's very close in heart. My husband, Dan Lunetta.